This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file, Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Craven, the hunter, who uses all the methods of the animals.
Now, witness the making of a new Marvel villain.
Once you're on his list, there's only one way off.
Aaron Taylor Johnson is Craven the Hunter. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
Hi, everyone, and welcome on in to another edition of Eye on the Enemy, powered by the Eagles Pin Pull Network. I'm John Stolnis. I'm a writer for BleedingGreenNation.com. Coming up, we're going to preview this Sunday afternoon's big game between the 11-2 Philadelphia Eagles and the 10-3 Pittsburgh Steelers, an intra-state rivalry, the Keystone State Championship, taking place Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock Eastern Time at Lincoln Financial Field. And Jeff Hartman from the Steel Curtain Network will be joining us to help break down what's been going on with the Steelers. We'll get an eye on the enemy and figure out why it is the Steelers have been playing so darn well with Russell Wilson cooking at quarterback. So we'll do that coming up here in just a second. But first, just wanted to ask you, if you haven't done so in a while and you listen to this podcast and the Eagles Pin Pull Network collection of podcasts on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a review, leave us a rating, let us know what you think of the show. I would love to hear what you think about Eye on the Enemy in particular. The folks we have on, the content we discuss, would love to know what you think, and if you have any ideas or thoughts about the show, I would love to hear them. So please feel free to go ahead and do that. So joining me to break down this game, a big game this Sunday between the Eagles and the Steelers, some intrastate rivalry going on here. Jeff Hartman, managing editor and podcast host for the Steel Curtain Network. Jeff, welcome to Eye on the Enemy. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am looking forward to this game in Week 15. It should be entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, it really should be. I mean, you've got two great teams here. The Steelers are 10-3, leading the AFC North right now. They're playing great football with Russell Wilson at quarterback. They play in a tough division. You know, the Eagles took care of the Ravens a couple of weeks ago, but the Steelers team comes in here playing really well. They took care of the Cleveland Browns last week, beat the Cincinnati Bengals the week before that, and then had a string of wins before. So the Steelers are really playing good football right now. And I want to start off talking about the quarterback position, which is, you know, fairly typical when we're doing most of these different kinds of things, because it really feels like the offense has taken off since Russell Wilson was given the starting job back. And I know there was a little bit of controversy when Justin Fields was kind of put to the side in favor of Russell Wilson. Am I remembering that correctly? It was like, 4 or 5 weeks into the season and Fields was playing decent football. Is that, yeah. Do I have that timeline right?
He was 4-2, and Russell Wilson was finally medically cleared. And Mike Tomlin made in hindsight, it's always 20/20, but he made the unbelievable decision to abandon the quarterback that had gotten you to a 4-2 record. You were still winning football games. Your defense was still your Steelers defense. And he just pulled the rug out and said, no, we're going with Russ. And people that cover the team that are within the building have said Russell Wilson, going back to spring, has always looked sharp. He is definitely, some would say, a Hall of Fame quarterback. We're looking at his resume, that he's the guy. And Mike Tomlin, to his credit, had told media, fans, anyone that would listen, that he is our guy. And when he's healthy, he's going to play. to be honest, I don't think anyone saw two things happening. They didn't see Justin Fields starting the first 6 games of the season, and they didn't see Justin Fields winning 4 of those 6 based on what we know about him in his time in Chicago. Nonetheless, that's what happened. But Mike Tomlin said, I'm a man of my word. He is the starting quarterback. And since then, there has not been a lot of clamoring for Justin Fields. We'll put it that way. He's done a good job. The offense is, but they're winning in weird ways. Like they're putting up 44 points. Not all of that was offense. It was a defensive score in that game 2 weeks ago in Cincinnati. They're scoring, 20, mid-20s. I mean, they're averaging 24.8 points per game this season. Go back to the last 2 years. Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky era, not fond. 17 and 18 points per game, respectively. So that's almost a touchdown better. It's been a good ride. Russell Wilson has the fan base behind him now, and we'll see what he can do in this tough stretch of games starting with Philly.
Yeah, we've seen a number of times teams bring in these veteran quarterbacks who were great once and maybe are starting to slow down a little bit and it just blow up in their faces. The New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers, the prime example. But I mean, even, when Russell Wilson was one of those guys with the Denver Broncos, it was a disaster in Denver. And so I don't think anybody really had a sense that it would go this well in Pittsburgh. 6-1 since taking over. He's got a passer rating of 103.9, 64.8% completion percentage, 12 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions right now. Has the offense changed? Are they doing things differently with Russell Wilson at quarterback than they were doing with Justin Fields? What's been the catalyst for Russ's improved play this year?
I think, yes, first and foremost, they are doing things different. Justin Fields, I mean, when you have a guy like that as your quarterback, you're going to utilize his athleticism. You're going to have a lot of designed quarterback runs. Why? He's like a running back. Like, he's huge. He's a freak of an athlete. And now with Russell Wilson, well, now it's going to be a little bit different. Now Arthur Smith is leaning into those. He loves the tight end packages. He'll put 3 tight ends, 4 tight ends out there if he can. And they're utilizing Russell pre-snap reads, understanding what the defense is going to do. And what you're seeing a little bit more in the last few weeks, because people have to remember the injury that he sustained was a calf injury. And so that limited his mobility early on. And we saw him in the preseason for a little bit, and he just was like a statue. And that's Russell Wilson, who is not 6 feet tall, even regardless of what the program tells you, is not 6 feet tall. He is a sitting duck if he doesn't have his mobility. The last few weeks, you've started to see him get his mobility back. He's trusting at that calf again. I think the perfect play to kind of outline how it's working now is the touchdown pass to Pat Freiermuth against Cleveland last week. He stepped up into the pocket, moved a little bit to his right, set his feet, and he just beautiful pass to Pat Freiermuth, who then is able to get into the end zone for the score. That was the mobility he didn't have when he first came back. He has it now. I think the Steelers are still looking to be a balanced offense. They don't want to have Russell Wilson needing to throw the ball 35 times. If they do that and that's a part of their design, that's one thing. We saw that against the Bengals a couple weeks ago. But they still want to run the football with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. It's tough. It's going to be tough against Philadelphia. They have a young offensive line. Broderick Jones, right tackle, second-year guy. Mason McCormick, right guard, rookie. Zach Frazier, center, rookie. They are a young group, and so we'll see if they can get some traction on the ground game because I know the Steelers are going to want to keep the ball, possess the football, and hopefully finish drives with touchdowns.
Yeah, I want to talk about the offensive line here in just a second, but looking at just real quickly with Najee Harris, I mean, I've seen a couple of games for the Steelers this year. I saw their game against the Commanders. I live in the Northern Virginia area, so that one was easy to catch, and their game against the Ravens. He's a tough runner. Seems like he, churns out some pretty good yardage. I mean, I wouldn't say he's like a superstar player or anything like that. 3.9 yards per attempt is, it's not flashy. He's got 877 yards on the season, 5 touchdowns. So it seems to me kind of like averaging around 67 yards a game, a grinder, kind of a grinded out guy, not really somebody that's going to flash or hit the big play most of the time, but kind of a between the tackles runner. So do you see them trying to feed him the football a little bit here in this game as well?
If they're smart, they utilize both of their backs for what they're good at. You hit the nail on the head. Najee Harris is a grinder. He is a guy that's 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and we'll live with that. You get 3 yards on first down, you get 3 yards on second down, you're setting up third and manageable. You can live like that. The Steelers have lived like that for a very long time with Mike Tomlin at the helm. But Jalen Warren's a different type of back. He is that one cut and go. I compare him more to like an Austin Eckler back when he was in his prime. He's a receiver. He can get him in space, and he can make people miss. I would love to see the Steelers utilize Najee Harris in the passing game more. He can catch the ball, and you get him in space. he's like a Mack truck coming down the freeway with some of these defensive backs. You can just tell they want no part of trying to tackle that guy. He has the most, I think, broken tackles in the NFL as a ball carrier. He missed tackle rate, if you believe that type of thing, is just off the charts with Najee Harris. So the Steelers' running game, they've done this, and you might see this again on Sunday. I don't know. We'll see. They'll put Najee Harris out there for 2 series, and they'll see how it goes. And then they put Jaylen Warren in, but they never really do have a regular rotation. It just is kind of like this, let's throw it against the wall and see if something sticks. If they were smart, I think the Steelers would actually utilize them more based off of down and distance, based off of what they want to do, without it being a giant red flag when Jaylen Warren comes in, expect this play. I think the Steelers' running game is more dynamic when they utilize both backs more frequently than they have been.
Let's talk about the passing game and some of the weapons that Russell Wilson has to throw to. At last check, George Pickens, their star wide receiver, didn't sound like he was going to play on Sunday afternoon. As we record here on Friday afternoon, what is the latest you're seeing about George Pickens and his availability?
I'd bet a lot of money he's not playing on Sunday, just because it's a hamstring. The Steelers have bigger fish to fry, and it's crazy as it sounds. You want to go in Philadelphia and win, but the big game is next week for the Steelers. They have the Ravens on Saturday at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. That's a division game. They win that game. They probably win the division. I think the Steelers have to be cautious with him. Mike Tomlin said on Tuesday in his press conference when he's healthy, he's going to play, and I believe him. But they also have to be thinking, why rush him back? If it was a playoff game, would he be playing? I think he would. It's not a playoff game. You have to start thinking about that. They could clinch this week with a multitude of scenarios. You want to have your best playmaker available when the games matter the most. So I don't think he's going to play this week, and that is going to really, really handcuff the passing game.
So, I mean, it's good news for the Eagles that the Ravens are next on the schedule. It's kind of a little benefit here that we haven't talked about a lot in Philadelphia, but I don't think the Steelers are looking past the Eagles.
No.
It's a big game, but certainly the more is at stake, more is on the line next week against the Ravens for Pittsburgh. So who else are, I mean, this is a dramatically improved Eagles secondary from a year ago, the number 2 pass defense in all of football in terms of yards allowed. How does Russell Wilson cook in the passing game without George Pickens and against one of the best secondaries in football right now?
That's a great question, and I wish I had an answer for it. Because a lot of fans will say, let's go back and look at the Cleveland tape. Like, what did they do without Pickens? I don't think that's fair. If I were a coach, I would be very hesitant to lean hard on what the Steelers did in that game. Why? Scotty Miller, who ended up having some crucial catches in that game in the win, thought he was going to be inactive when he reported to Acrisure Stadium. George Pickens wasn't deemed not ready until an hour and a half before kickoff. This was not a week-long game plan without George Pickens. They kind of had to muddle things together. So the question for Steeler fans, we've all been wondering, we won't know until Sunday, how do they replicate and try to get his production, George Pickens that is, with what they have? Is it all Mike Williams? Mike Williams seems like he would be a good fit. Similar size, similar structure, similar skill set. But how do they make this work? In my opinion, if Russell Wilson is going to have success, it's going to have to be Pat Freiermuth. It's going to have to be the tight end. It's going to have to be, you have Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. You've got a lot of other big names back there in the secondary. Very impressive. I think you have to find unique ways to attack the middle of the field, hoping that Pat Freiermuth is a mismatch advantage for the Steelers against a linebacker. I think that's how you have to move the ball. And then once they adjust, maybe you can hit Mike Williams if you get single coverage down the field. He still is capable. He proved that last week. Only 3 catches, but still the catches that he made were very, very timely, not easy catches. That's going to be really something that a lot of Steeler fans are anxious to see. How did the Steelers try and make things work without George Pickens?
Well, let's flip to the other side of the football, and let's take a look at what the Steelers' defense might be looking at against the Eagles' offense. And as I mentioned right before we got started here, it's been an interesting week here in Philadelphia with some of this A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts drama going on. And I think some of it has been overblown a little bit. It is a little bit disconcerting when one of your team leaders, Brandon Graham, goes on a radio show and says that your quarterback and your star wide receiver basically aren't friends anymore, even though one is a godfather to the other's child. Jalen Hurts is godfather to one of A.J. Brown's kids. So it's like, what is going on here? We saw internal turmoil help collapse the team in 2023. We are certainly the Donovan McNabb, Terrell Owens situation will never leave our psyche here in Philadelphia. So, we're concerned a little bit, that are things starting to fall apart because the passing game isn't working really well? Putting all that aside, and everybody was saying all the right things this week, and I don't think there's as much drama going on in the locker room as it seemed to be from the outside. But the point is still, the passing game for the Eagles has not been good over these last few weeks. And Jalen Hurts has only thrown for 300 or more yards this year once. He did it against the Saints back in week 3 in a 15-12 win. This team is obviously a run-oriented team. That's its identity right now. But I want to start off talking about the passing game. From where you sit, how did the Steelers approach Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith? And then after that, it's kind of a drop-off, right? I mean, there's no Dallas Goedert. Grant Calcaterra is going to be the starting tight end again this week. The number 3 receiver in this team doesn't really exist. There's Jahan Dotson, who's been mostly invisible this year. So I think it's an interesting thing how the Eagles are going to find a way to manufacture some yardage in this passing game, although the weakness of the Steelers' defense is in pass defense, 17th in the NFL.
I think that what the Steelers are going to do what they've done all season. And this is what the Steelers have done when they face a dynamic offense with multiple threats. They will take Dante Jackson, their number 2 cornerback, and they will put them on your number 1 threat. So I would expect him to line up across from A.J. Brown, and he is going to get safety help every pass play. And they're going to put Joey Porter Jr. on Devontae Smith, your number 2 wide receiver, the Steelers' number 1 cornerback, and say, you're a big man. He's not that big. Lock him down. See what you can do. So this is going to be interesting because really the matchup would be Smith's speed against Porter being very handsy, can draw some flags. But what's that going to do with A.J. Brown? If he avoids A.J. Brown, are we going to see a 2.0 of 2004 when the Philadelphia Eagles, 7-0 at the time, came to Heinz Field and Terrell Owens is following Donovan McNabb up and down the side? Like, is that going to happen? My question as a Steeler fan, and I've wondered this since I've heard the rumblings coming out of Philly, is are they going to abandon Saquon Barkley, the bell cow that has got them there, just to appease A.J. Brown? People might laugh at that and scoff at that, but that stuff happens in the NFL.
It does.
You want to look at Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Jamar Chase, just give me the ball. What happens next game? They are forcing the ball to him no matter what. I'm really curious to see how this game plays out because really Saquon Barkley is such a dynamic player. That's the challenge. You average 190 points on the ground, 190 yards on the ground a game. Steelers' run defense is pretty solid. Are they going to abandon that plan and just go through the air? In which case, I would think the Steelers...
Future you faces some big expectations. Work out more, go to bed earlier, and most importantly, make smart money decisions. Thankfully, today you has Bank of America. One place with tools and guidance to help balance tasks from budgeting to saving. So you can just be you with big plans. Do more with a bank that asks, what would you like the power to do? Explore our tips and more at bankofamerica.com/futureyou.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write a million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the Vehicle Owner's Manual for important feature limitations and information.
Steelers front they're going to start to send some blitzes Jalen Hurts' way. They're very familiar with playing mobile quarterbacks, guys that will run, and they're going to try and get to him, get him off his spots. The Eagles, I think I saw, have surrendered 36 sacks this season, which is not a crazy number, but Jalen Hurts will hold on to the football. He'll take some sacks at times. So I think this is going to be a really interesting game plan from a Steelers defensive perspective.
I think, and you mentioned the fact that the Steelers' run defense is superior, number 4 run defense in the NFL. The Eagles ran all over the Ravens' run defense a couple of weeks ago. They came into the game the top-rated run defense in football. So, it's the Eagles have shown this year that when they're playing their best, when the offensive line is doing its thing, they have generally been superior than the run defenses that they have come up against. That's not saying it's going to happen this week. But I think Eagles fans are curious to see. I certainly don't want the Eagles abandoning the run. I don't want them ignoring Saquon Barkley, even if it is the strength of the Steelers defense. That threat still has to be there, and you never know when Saquon's going to break off a 65-yarder. I mean, he might be hemmed in for 2.5 quarters, and then all of a sudden in the third quarter he breaks one and blows the game open at that point. But I do want to see this Eagles offense function more in the passing game. And I think because that is the weakness of the Steelers defense, I think you might see a little bit more of that early on. What I'd like to see the Eagles offense do is play more tempo. When Jalen Hurts is playing tempo, when they're getting to the line and they're moving quickly and they're preventing the defense from swapping guys out, he's much more fluid in his passing. He hits that back step and the ball's out. Whereas when they're not doing that, you're right, he sits back there a long time, 3.5 seconds to throw on average this year, and last week against the Panthers was sitting back there 3.7, 3.8 seconds, and then dumping off, which was disconcerting as Eagles fans watching this, because it's like we've been in the league 4 years now. We really need to be kind of moving past all this. So, but give us a sense about the Steelers' run defense. Like, how good is it? Like, what do they do up front to stifle the opposing running game?
I think they just are very, very solid in their run fits. Because when you think about, okay, who's on the edge? You've got TJ Watt, and you're going to chip TJ Watt every single time, even in run support. And so a lot of times the plays go opposite Watt's side, even in the running game. The problem is that now the Steelers have Alex Highsmith back. Alex Highsmith, compared to Nick Herbig is a fantastic pass rusher, but he is not as good in run support. Alex Highsmith is great in run support. So now you have the two edges that can set that edge and not let plays get on the outside. So now you have to win in the interior. Cam Hayward is having, in my opinion, a season that is not just team MVP worthy. He should be getting some recognition for Defensive Player of the Year. Just got a new 3-year extension before the season started, and some people said, oh my gosh, really? He's getting up there in age. He's proving last year was nothing but an injury-plagued season. He's having a fantastic year. Keanu Benton is another player to watch, second-year player out of Wisconsin. He's having a great year. He can play the nose and the defensive tackle in the 3-4 scheme of the Steelers. And their linebacking crew, Elandon Roberts, Patrick Queen, and Peyton Wilson, rookie at NC State, they are all they're fitting their jobs to a T. And so that's what has really worked well for the Steelers, is they're not trying to overextend. I think sometimes you see anytime there's a big run, someone tries to do a little too much. The Steelers are just doing their jobs. They have not surrendered a lot of long runs. I know that's Saquon Barkley's MO this year, but that's going to be this battle that I'm really looking forward to seeing who wins and how does it happen.
One last thing I want to talk about, and I don't normally talk about this when I'm figuring out, different topics and what position matchups I want to take a look at, but I think one of the areas that could really go into the Steelers' favor is the kicking game. Yes. The Eagles have obviously had their troubles with Jake Elliott this year. They did not trust him last week to try a 54-yard field goal towards the end of the game, instead deciding to punt the ball from what is normally makeable Jake Elliott field goal territory. He has yet to make a field goal over 50 yards this year. Whereas Chris Boswell is having a phenomenal season, right? I mean, he's had some games where he's kicked 5-6 field goals in a game. I think it was one of the Ravens wins, right? Where didn't he kick 6 in that game?
It's happened twice where he's kicked 6 field goals and counted for all the points for the Steelers in a win.
Yeah, I mean, and that gives the Steelers flexibility to maybe play a little bit more conservative to take the 3-point. They have a great defense, so they've been able to rely on that a little bit this year. But that is a big matchup, right? I mean, what is Chris Boswell's range? How reliably speaking, is he a 55-yard guy? Is he a 60-yard guy?
Close to 60. I'd say between 55 and 60, he's still reliable. He's missed 3 kicks this season. One was a 62-yarder, end of the half, just trying, seeing if it goes. It had the leg. He had the distance, and this was at Acrisure Stadium, and just was wide right. He missed a kick in Cleveland in a blizzard, which was I think it was a 52-yarder, probably a stupid decision in those conditions to try it.
Yeah.
And then he had one blocked where a guy got a free release and he got his hand on it. Those are the only misses he's had. He's made a ton of kicks from 50-plus yards. Mike Tomlin is very comfortable sending him out there. I don't know what the weather is calling for right now in Philadelphia for Sunday, but if it's decent conditions, 54, 55, 56, they're very confident that Chris Boswell can make those kicks. And I didn't realize Elliott's struggles until I was looking at this game and noticed that and said, man, that's crazy, just how inconsistent, because I thought he was at one time one of the premier kickers in the NFL. But as we've seen this season with Justin Tucker, even the best have off years for sure. I do want to ask you a question if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
The Eagles haven't turned the ball over a lot. I think they only have 11 turnovers this season. The Steelers lead the NFL in takeaways. They've played a lot of teams that don't turn it over, and they have forced those turnovers. Is that typically, if there's a game that the Eagles turn it over a bunch, is it Jalen Hurts throwing it to the other team? Is it putting the ball on the turf of fumbles? What has been a mistake that they have made? Because the Steelers have been capitalizing. It's not just a trend. They take the ball away at a ridiculous clip. Almost, I think, 2 turnovers a game, I think, is what they're averaging. What are your thoughts in that department?
Well, I think that's one of the keys. That's one of the reasons Jalen Hurts, maybe his passing numbers in the passing game have struggled a little bit here over the last few weeks, is because early in the season, Hurts was turning the ball over quite a bit. I think he had 5 interceptions in the first 4 weeks of the season and lost a fumble or 2. I think so. He had 6 total turnovers, I think is what it was in the first 4 weeks. I forget exactly the interception to fumble ratio there. And since the bye week, since the week 5 bye week, he's, I think, thrown 1 interception since then. And I think he's maybe lost 1 fumble. It's because I think he's playing a little bit more conservative. Early in the season, I think he was forcing the ball into some tight coverages, into some windows. He was playing a little bit of hero ball. I think the offense, I think Kellen Moore was asking him a little bit more of him, and they hadn't been leaning on Saquon Barkley the way that they have since the bye week. And with the bye week, the offensive line went to the coaching staff and said, we need to run the ball more. We need that to be our identity. And ever since that's happened, Jalen Hurts, I think, has reined it in a little bit, and he's been using his legs a little bit more. And so that's, I think, why you've seen fewer interceptions from him over the course of this winning streak. And so that's one of the things I wrote about for Bleeding Green Nation this week was this team, the Eagles are a defense-first team, a run-first team right now. If my quarterback is going to err one side or the other, I'd rather him err on the side of caution, not turning the ball over, and maybe having some pretty pedestrian passing weeks, most of the time, rather than being a guy who maybe throws for 280, 300, 320, but throws 2 or 3 interceptions that really kill you. So I think that's why this is such an interesting game, because of all the conversations we've been having about the passing game, about the weaknesses and the struggles of the passing game. Because Pittsburgh's defense is weaker in pass defense, I'm thinking that the Eagles really are going to try and establish something through the air, especially early on in this game. And if Jalen Hurts is feeling the conversation about we're struggling passing the ball, we need to pass more, we need to be more productive in the passing game, will he try to force things? Will he try to, like you were talking about before, will they try to force the ball to A.J. Brown in situations where he hasn't felt comfortable trying to get the ball to him over these last few weeks in ways that has frustrated Brown? The psychology of all of this could result in what you're talking about, more turnovers by the Eagles on Sunday. And if that happens, I think the Steelers probably end up on the good side of this thing. And as we get to that, then I'm going to get a prediction from you. This game's in Philadelphia, of course, and it's a tough place to play for an opposing team. How do you see this one shaking out on Sunday afternoon?
So I did my prediction on several podcasts at Steel Curtain Network this week, and I thought about it long and hard, and, I'm an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. I'm a Steelers fan. I don't have to toe some company line. I'm a fan of the team. The Steelers haven't won in Philadelphia since, like, the 60s, and it's been 10 straight games that they've lost in Philly.
Wow.
And I think this is a game that's going to be a lot closer than people think. If you're a bettor and you're getting 5.5 points, bet the Steelers getting 5.5. That's just my logical take. I think you want to be aggressive, take the Steelers on the money line. And I think that what it comes down to in my prediction in my brain is it comes down to Chris Boswell makes a big field goal as time expires, and I have the Steelers winning 23-20. And I don't think it's a crazy output on offense because the Eagles don't give up a lot of points, but I think it would be a back-and-forth affair. I can't get through the fact that Russell Wilson has never lost to the Eagles. He's 6-0 against them. The dude's a winner. Like I used to make fun of Russell Wilson because he's corny and he can be a little, he just seems fake at times. Yeah. But the dude's a winner. Like it's the only way I can put it. So I've got the Steelers 23-20 if you want a score prediction.
I do want to score prediction, so I appreciate that. And it's a reasonable score given how these two teams play. They usually play close games. Really, the NFL is a coin toss from week to week. So you never know. Hey, folks, make sure you're checking out all of Jeff Hartman's great stuff over at Steel Curtain over the Steel Curtain Network. I'm going to get it out right. I'm going to land the plane here. Steel Curtain Network. Jeff, thanks for coming back on Eye on the Enemy. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, before I give you my prediction on the game, let's take a look at some of the other games in Week 15 that concern the Eagles and some of the other key matchups around the NFL. In the 1 o'clock window, you've got the Washington Commanders in New Orleans to take on the Saints. Washington favored by 7.5 points on the road. They got back on the good foot last week and looked more like their early season selves. And I see no reason why that won't continue, especially as the Saints do not have Derek Carr at quarterback, who hurt his wrist towards the end of the game last week. The Commanders should go into New Orleans and handle the Saints without a whole lot of problem. I like the Commanders in that one. You've got, the Chiefs in Cleveland to take on the Browns. Chiefs are 4-point road favorites. I like the Chiefs to win that game as well. 1 o'clock window also, Dallas Cowboys at Carolina to take on the Panthers. This is how, can you imagine at the beginning of the season when you were looking at the Week 15 schedule and you have the Cowboys, the defending NFC East champions, going in to take on the putrid Panthers in Carolina, that here in mid-December, the Panthers would be 3-point favorites against the Dallas Cowboys. Can you even believe that we are here living in this timeline, everyone? It's really crazy, but the Panthers 3-point favorites against the Cowboys. The Panthers have been playing much better football lately, as evidenced by the way they almost beat the Eagles last week. They almost beat the Chiefs. This week, I think they actually do beat the Dallas Cowboys. I'm taking the Carolina Panthers to win that game. In the 4 o'clock window, of course, there's the Steelers and the Eagles. I'll give you my pick on that in just a second. The Broncos are hosting the Colts. Broncos favored by 4.5. Bo Nix having an unbelievable season. He might be the offensive rookie of the year. It's between him and Jaden Daniels at this point, I would think, but I like the Broncos to beat the Colts and win that one. You've got the Bills. This is the big game of the week, I think, outside of the Steelers and the Eagles, and this might even be a bigger game. Probably is. The Bills going into Detroit to take on the Lions. The Lions are 2.5-point favorites over the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have had a string of tough games as of late. The Lions have too, but the Lions played last Thursday, so they've had like a little mini bye week coming into this game. And I like the Lions to continue the winning streak. I see no reason to pick against Detroit, even though they almost stumbled a week ago against the Packers, but I think at home against Buffalo, I think they take care of business and they beat the Bills. And then on Sunday night, you've got the Packers in Seattle to take on the Seahawks. This is a big game for NFC wildcard implications. The Seahawks defense has been absolutely phenomenal so far this year, and I think the Seahawks are going to pull this one out. I think the Seahawks are going to, even though they're home underdogs, this will be my upset of the week. I'll take the Seahawks to beat the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. And then you've got 2 Monday Night Football games again. We're doing this again, huh, NFL? We're doing 2 Monday Night Football games? Okay. The first one at 8:15, you've got the Bears in Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Vikings will win that easy. 6.5-point favorites. That's kind of a skinny line, given the trend line of these two teams. Sam Darnold, 4 touchdowns last week? What has gotten into Sammy Darnold? Golly, unbelievable. And then you've got the Falcons in Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. What a brutal game that's going to be. The Falcons are 4-point road favorites. I expect the Falcons to win that game. Which brings me to the Eagles and the Steelers. The Eagles are 5-point favorites, as Jeff mentioned a minute ago. I do like the Eagles to win this game. I think it's going to be a field goal game, but I like the Eagles to win this one. I think Jake Elliott comes through this week. I think Jake Elliott is the one who kicks a late field goal to put the Eagles ahead, or they get a late touchdown, but Jake Elliott contributes in this game somehow. I think the Eagles are going to try and pass the football. I think they're going to have a modicum of success, but again, I think it's going to be the run game late. Even though the Steelers have a really good run defense, I think it's going to be Saquon Barkley, and I think it's going to be the formula we've seen all year long from this team, winning out in the end. I like the Eagles to win this one 24-21. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this edition of Eye on the Enemy. My thanks to Jeff Hartman once again for coming on the podcast. A reminder to please check out all of our fine podcasts here at the Eagles Pin Pull Network, and leave a 5-star rating and a review at Apple Podcasts for us, and at Spotify as well. Check out my stuff at bleedinggreennation.com also if you get a chance. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time right here on Eye on the Enemy.